We begin with an update on immigration at the southern border. The Department of Homeland Security announced today proposed new rules to prevent migrants from fraudulently using children to enter the United States. DHS is publishing a final rule to implement the Flores Settlement Agreement, a federal court agreement that limits how long immigrant children can be detained. Flores requires that the government generally release children after 20 days. That means migrants with children entering the U.S. usually get released while their asylum claims make their way through the courts.
No child should be a pawn in a scheme to manipulate our immigration system, which is why the new rule eliminates the incentive to exploit children as a free ticket, or as one gentleman in Guatemala told me, a passport for migration to the United States.
DHS Acting Secretary Kevin McAleenan announced the final rule to implement the Flores Agreement. It includes facilities which will better care for families, providing medical treatment, outdoor areas like soccer fields, and access to video conferencing for court proceedings. Matt Sorens of the Christian humanitarian organization World Relief joined us now to talk about the new immigration rule. Welcome, Matt.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
What are your thoughts on the administration's proposed rule regarding migrant children at the border with Mexico?
Yeah, our general view at World Relief is that children really do not belong in detention facilities. We think that it's not a safe or healthy condition for kids, and that's why our government decades ago made this agreement that we shouldn't detain children and should release them into the least restrictive possible situation. We think that it's really important that we stick with that agreement, of course, with safeguards to make sure that, that children really are with their parents as they say they are. We should be testing those things, but those are a very, very, very small percentage of all cases. And this rule would apply to all children, allowing them to be detained really indefinitely pending the end of their court hearing, which in many cases is months or even years.
DHS Acting Secretary Kevin McAleenan said this year that the U.S. has seen a, quote, unprecedented flow of family units, mainly from Central America, announcing that during the first 10 months of the fiscal year, U.S. Customs and Border Protection apprehended or encountered nearly 475,000 families, 90% crossing the border illegally. What do you think should be done to address this, Matt?
Yeah, I'd say two things. One is one of the reasons a lot of the families are coming illegally is because we have a new policy in the last few years called metering, where people who go to the front door, if you will, they try to walk up to the border and request asylum there, which is legal, are now being turned away. They're being told they could wait 4 or 5 months when they would have been processed more, almost immediately in the past. And in effect, that new policy is funneling people out to the desert, which is dangerous for kids. It's just not an ideal situation. It doesn't honor the rule of law. So I think respecting our asylum laws is really important. And then for those who are apprehended, we think it's important that we screen people carefully, that we, make sure that we use alternatives to detention, like an ankle bracelet on mom or dad, to make sure that they do show up for court. And the record thus far is that 80+% of asylum-seeking families in the last several months are showing up for court. But that allows us to not put kids in a situation of detention, which is also incredibly expensive for taxpayers.
McAleenan went on to say that the driving force behind the crisis is weakness in the legal immigration framework, with human smugglers advertising and migrants knowing that even if they cross illegally, if they have a child, they will be released into the U.S. while they wait on court proceedings that could take 5 years or more, Matt. What is the solution here? Is there a way to stop the fraud and protect kids at the same time?
I think the most important thing we could do to really address this while still making sure we're protecting kids is to have a more functional asylum system, so that it takes, in some cases, 5 years, which we're talking about 5 years that kids would be held in a detention facility. That is unacceptable. And frankly, that's unacceptable to those with legitimate claims who should be processed more quickly and granted asylum under the law. It's also unacceptable because it could provide an incentive for people who really are not going to qualify under the law. And to be fair, most of them don't know that. Most of them are being told things by smugglers, and they don't know how U.S. asylum law works. But if we had a more functional asylum system that processed people in a matter of months on a consistent basis, then people with legitimate claims who have a well-founded fear of persecution would be protected, which is really important, including children. And those who do not have legitimate claims would learn it's not worth a dangerous trip through Mexico just to be denied.
All right, Matt Sorens of World Relief, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.